who is Uncle Howdy, the terrifying new incarnation of the childhood tormentor of Bray Wyatt? Well, I want to answer that question for you. I want to tell you both of the people who played the role so far, one of which, spoilers, is Bray Wyatt himself, and give you a little more information as to where we're going with this Bray Wyatt storyline, where we're heading into WrestleMania, and how Bray Wyatt himself is going to be changed by the character as we go on with the story. So to start with, the basis for Uncle Howdy is very similar to a lot of Bray Wyatt characters. He's had many childhood tormentors, Sister Abigail perhaps the most famous in the Eater of Worlds element of Bray Wyatt. This has left Bray in somewhat of a childlike state in many ways. He is prone to rash decisions. He is intense. He's also at times very trusting. Think back to Randy Orton, Alexa Bliss, allowing people to betray him and hurt him. And this is a huge part of the overall character that we're seeing with Uncle Howdy, an element of trust. Bray Wyatt should never meet and get on with Kevin Owens. That's the Festival of Friendship I don't think anyone's ready for. This particular incarnation, Uncle Howdy, is based on a real-life person. Bray Wyatt's actual real-life uncle, Barry Windham. It's also played by not just Bray Wyatt himself, but another member of Bray Wyatt's family. Not Barry Windham, not an actual uncle, but Bray Wyatt's brother, Bo Dallas. They've never been brothers on the main screen, on the main roster, but they are brothers in real life, and Bo Dallas did sign a new WWE deal to play the character and other characters related to Bray Wyatt shortly after Bray Wyatt signed a new deal back in September. A huge part of what Bray is trying to do at the moment involves bringing more people into his world to create his own environment in which people can thrive. We'll see more of LA Knight, for example, in that environment before we see LA Knight out of it in the days to come. Alexa Bliss has been in many ways seduced to the dark side, is succumbing to that return, and we will eventually see Bo Dallas as, at least in some capacity, Bo Dallas, but we may not see him as Uncle Howdy, which is also a really interesting thing that we're looking at as this storyline actually develops. The Fiend was also one of those characters that was a childhood tormentor. Bray Wyatt in his last incarnation was the sort of the child's TV host, the Mr. Rogers if you were, and that character developed based on the input of The Fiend. The Fiend, of course, was the dark side, the devil on his shoulder. It is a concept of temptation. It is very similar in a lot of different cultures. Taoism, obviously voodoo, in which Bray Wyatt is a particular proponent, particularly where he grew up, he was very familiar with it. All of these have those characters, those elements of dark side, trying to seduce, trying to tempt. In many ways, Bray Wyatt is not just one of those himself, but he's also always hovered over by the devil on his shoulder. You can almost see the claw marks on the shoulder. Sister Abigail, of course, was a leader of a cult, which Bray Wyatt joined. He then became a leader. The Fiend was another, and now Uncle Howdy is not just a leader of a cult. You might suggest he's the head of the table. When we look at the match at the Royal Rumble with LA Knight, Uncle Howdy and indeed members of the Wyatt Six were visible, watching, always watching. But because of who Uncle Howdy is, that is also a representation of Bray Wyatt watching. You see Bray Wyatt and Uncle Howdy are one and the same, despite the fact we see them both in real life, as it were, in front of our screens. While we have seen Bo Dallas playing the role, the original person playing the role of Uncle Howdy, particularly in vignettes that aired previously, was Bray Wyatt, and the voice is indeed Bray Wyatt as well. This means that the intention is, as I've mentioned previously with Uncle Howdy being the devil on the shoulder and Uncle Harper being the angel on the shoulder, the idea is that Uncle Howdy will tempt man, in this case Bray Wyatt, to the dark side, eventually finishing with Bray Wyatt becoming Uncle Howdy himself. I'm suspecting an unmasking moment similar to the higher power that was Vince McMahon many decades ago. The reason LA Knight was targeted was because Uncle Howdy said so, but as I've just mentioned, Uncle Howdy and Bray Wyatt are one and the same. As you see Bray Wyatt himself unravel, he continues to blame Uncle Howdy until, what we saw on this week's SmackDown, he starts to accept Uncle Howdy. He starts to accept his dark side and everything that comes with it. The face reveal of Uncle Howdy is not with us just yet. It could take a very long time to get there. Let's be honest, we've been waiting around 4 months now for more development in the Bray Wyatt storyline. So far we've seen one match and little character development as regards Bray Wyatt himself. Now, WrestleMania could be key for the character, particularly as we talk about an unmasking. Wyatt versus Howdy seems likely, even if the two are in agreement at the moment. Bray Wyatt ultimately is going to become, you may have heard me mention earlier, the head of the table in his own family. I'm not calling Uncle Howdy a tribal chief, but let's just say if there's going to be a tribal chief off, there's an obvious choice available. For now, Bray Wyatt has surrendered to Howdy and his darker impulses, and there is a visual representation of this with the new mask. At the Royal Rumble, Bray Wyatt debuted a new character, but the character actually bears a striking similarity to The Fiend. The Fiend will not return, but also it kind of already has. You see, The Fiend and Uncle Howdy are actually extremely similar characters. The idea was that The Fiend was the dark side, always calling a really positive and happy Bray Wyatt towards him. The idea that you've woken the beast. It's all one character with different masks on. And that is what Uncle Howdy is as well. One character with a different mask. A character who fully accepts and has embraced his dark side, whereas The Fiend was someone still fighting, refusing to accept the dark side. This is a story that Bray Wyatt has been trying to tell for years now, potentially the last decade at least for Bray Wyatt, but there has always been something that has stopped him from completing the story that he wants to tell. Bray Wyatt himself is writing this particular angle. He is the headline for it. He has been making every direct move and every choice involved, but he's not writing it alone. Rob Fee, in charge of long-term content, was brought in many ways to temper Wyatt's intentions and make them fit better on screen. The screenwriter, if you will, to the novelist that is Bray Wyatt. Now, Bray Wyatt does have an element of creative control. He's one of very few people on the roster with this. That list also includes big names such as Roman Reigns and Edge, though very few beyond that actually have some creative control. Wyatt still intends to debut the Wyatt Six. There's a reason LA Knight was referred to by Uncle Howdy as Little Pig. The Wyatt Six are perhaps better named though the Howdy Six. At the point at which Bray Wyatt fully accepts his dark side, we will then see all of those different incarnations, the different elements of one man behind a mask, including The Fiend, Sister Abigail, Rambling Rabbit, Huskers the Pig, so many more. There is another side to this that Bray Wyatt will be introducing once he has succumbed to the dark side, and that ultimately is the light side. It is change, it is transformation, it is redemption. It is, of course, Uncle Harper, and we should not be forgetting about that. While this story is taking a long time to tell, the intention very much is to put Bray Wyatt, whatever guise he is in, against Roman Reigns. But in order to become everything he is intended to be, he needs to be introduced to and accept his dark side, and then be introduced to and accept his light side. It is the dichotomy of man. It's a little bit Batman, but it's very dichotomy of man. We've seen plenty of Uncle Howdy and plenty of Bo Dallas, but what about Uncle Harper, the angel on Wyatt's shoulder? First, Bray Wyatt must surrender to the dark. Perhaps by losing a match to Uncle Howdy at WrestleMania, or to be fair, any time before. I would like them to speed up this one ever so slightly. The plan is that Bray Wyatt and his family will one day meet Roman Reigns in battle. Of course, the big question right now is whether Roman Reigns in battle will have his own family with him, or in fact, will not.